right. Are we comfortable? See, this is where someone says something really funny, and then we break into "Welcome to Star Trek, Trek, Trek." But so, I think we have to. Do we wait for that to go naturally, or
say something funny? No.
Someone says something funny. Not necessarily me.
Well,
Hey, hey, hey! It's gonna be me.
And welcome to Star Trek, 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 our ongoing adventure through the episodes of Star Trek. And this week we are carrying on with the brand new Season 2 of Strange New Worlds. Among the Lotus Eaters, freshly picked from the Odyssey, Homer's very own adventure. Well, not his very own adventure, his very own storytelling of adventure. Stars, please give us context. Where is Among the Lotus Eaters from?
This in this stream. Okay,
this is for the review now. This is going to be sliced. This is going to be cut up.
All right. Well, so this is your context, fresh from the lips of someone who has a bachelor degree in history, including a course in Greek archaeology, which means I have, of course, forgotten all pertinent details. So in the Odyssey, I believe Odysseus and his crew find an island on their way back to mainland Greece. I think it's Athens. I forget. And it's a island upon which there is a small population. Usually, I think it's all shipwrecked, sailors and such like that. And they eat and subsist mostly off of lotus flowers, I believe it is, and the water that is naturally occurring on the island. But the combination of the two, or I believe just the water, basically induces euphoria, and no one has any compulsion to actually get off of the island and leave and go back to their homes, which is a big no-no for Odysseus, because that's the entire point of his journey, is I want to get home to my smoking hot wife and probably a few male slaves that I dally with.
Which, knowing Pike, could also be true.
This is very true. He does have very, handsome male yeoman.
He does. He did have a handsome male yeoman until he left him on the ruins of Rigel 7 to become another megalomaniac Starfleet officer who decided to claim himself to be the king. Where have we heard this story before? The Omega Glory, other ones.
I was going to say there's a space seed, kind of. Like,
yeah,
if you'd let him curdle for another 20 minutes, he would have come back in the movie for Strange New Worlds instead.
Okay. This episode would definitely felt like classic Trek. Was very much a nice little one-shot adventure, and very typical kind of almost felt like a Voyager episode. I think someone else remarked on that as well. Sort of late 90s kind of TV. I remarked it as being very Stargate-esque in the way it's handled. I know you guys haven't watched a lot of Stargate, but I binged it at one point, and it felt very similar kind of trappings. I think it's partly because of the Mongolian kind of culture. It was sort of like throwbacks to, what sets do we have around? Oh gosh, we've got these costumes here. Let's just use them and throw us back to that century.
Yeah, I think that's pretty appropriate. It's a nice blend of TOS style, because obviously you're calling it all the way back to the cage with the actual trappings of the environment. But yeah, there's something about the setup and the way it's executed that is very TNG. I'm reminded of that, is it season 1 Voyager, where Janeway gets injured on a away mission and she's like picked up by that old man who has amnesia, and he thinks that she's his daughter.
That's right.
And he wants to get to the prison where, I think Tuvok and Kim are being held up, and it reminds me very much of that, especially in the performance of Luke, I believe his name is. I don't know what the
Luke, L-U-Q, Luke.
And now you talk.
Sorry.
Yeah, Reed Birney. I'm going to call him out by name. Reed Birney. He did a great job as Luke in this.
Yeah. So the everyman, I am the Kalar that speaks. We're not going to see the rest of the society, but we see this guy in his yurt, and for all his glory, it did feel that. I think that bit felt a bit thin for me. It feels like this whole. The Kalar are a race. They are a whole race, but it does seem to be this one palace and these group of people in a field. It didn't seem to be like a whole planet's worth of people.
Oh, so very classic Trek then.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a work camp representing an entire, and just the underbaked philosophy of having to piece together a reason why you don't have memories of anything. So
the problem with classic Trek that we all love, is that they can't all be winners.
Yeah.
And back when you had 22, 24 episode seasons and you had 7 seasons of those, some of the episodes are like, oh, okay, but they're like, I have a lot of questions. And you could have developed this more into like maybe plant the seeds down the line a couple episodes ago so we finally get here instead of just discovering, oh, hey, Pike left a guy behind years ago and didn't go look for the body and
Well,
poke it with a stick.
Context is that in the cage, going back to 1967, I believe that was the year when it was unaired.
64 actually.
64. No, 64 was the concept.
Is when it was filmed.
Oh, was it really that much before? Gosh.
I'm pretty sure it was 64 it was filmed, yeah.
Anyway, in the cage, he has stated that, they come back from Rigel 7. I lost my yeoman. So it was stated back then that, the yeoman that he lost turns out to be Zack, or Yeoman Zack, who ends up ruling the planet. So there's a nice little tie back there. I think going back to Rigel 7 could have been a bit more important for Pike here. I don't know. It seemed like... I feel like he didn't kind of... Because you look at the cage, like, he's hung up over Rigel 7. He's had a rough time to the point where he's considering leaving Starfleet. And here he's sort of just like, hey, it's another away mission. We're losing our memories. And sorry, Zach, I'm sorry we left you behind. But it didn't have quite the emotional turmoil that was implied in the cage.
So I think part of what that is that with all the context that we have of Rigel 7 and what we're shown in the cage, because we are actually shown direct parts of this heavily episode draws heavily from its aesthetics. All we know is that 2-3 people died, but we now know it was 2 instead of 3. And shit went bad really quickly. From what Una says, it was like a 4-hour from "Hey guys" to "Oh god, we're dying." And the impression I got from Pike's conversations with Boyce, when they're having their infamous martini chats, is that it's not so much that Rigel 7 was so bad that he has to leave Starfleet. It's that this is the straw that broke the camel's back. It's like, I'm tired of losing people with the inference of this is not the first time this has happened. This is not the first time that I feel like I've been responsible. This is not the first time, that I've made a command decision that I feel has implicitly killed people. And I don't think that Rigel 7 is important because it's basically one of the few frames of reference we have for Pike outside of Discovery and Our Strange New Worlds. But I think for him, it was just the last thing in a long line of traumatic incidents that was pushing him in that direction. But I am really glad they came back to it. This is such a cool place to take his character.
It's nice to have a bit of closure on that as well, because, I mean, not that there was really an open-ended question, but there was always the sort of like, wow, why did this bum Pike out so much? Like, why was this important for part of his journey into remaining captain of the Enterprise? And it featured heavily in the cage as well as, he takes Vina back there, and he has another fight with a Kalar. Obviously a bit spot me in the corner there, but he's a bit more of a kind of aggressive man, and they kind of expand them from just like literally mindless like zombie people to just mindless field workers. But it's cool that they explain about the forgetfulness. That was an interesting take.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like when you do a callback to something less like a canon connection like this, you can have essentially one of two reactions, and one is okay, I guess that's how you're justifying this, which is that's usually a remember berry type thing where it's like, look, remember this thing, and it's like that's a substitute for good story writing. But here it's you hear it and you realize what the context is, and you see Zach and you understand what the situation is. You go, oh, that sucks, buddy, because it adds a new spin to the situation and is adding to the story rather than just relying on a previous story to carry emotional weight. You don't have to have seen the cage for this to matter. Especially during the briefing, you can tell from Anson Mount's acting that this is something that weighs on him very heavily. He's not nearly as... compare his briefing here with the briefing that he has with Sam Kirk and Uhura before they do the Comet mission in season 1, where he's cracking jokes about mustaches and he's leading the conversation. Whereas here, Una and Spock are kind of dictating things, and he's just sitting there looking very pensive and unhappy that he's having to deal with this because it's a raw spot for him. I like that they pull that from him. Yes. Thanks, Sam.
It's Sam Frank. I'm thinking that's a drink, isn't it? Sam Frank.
Probably.
Sure. Sam Adams.
Sam Adams. No, I'm thinking of Shirley Temple as well. No, okay. Anyway, speaking of Shirley Temples, Ortegas had a fair bit to do. I thought this was going to be much more of an Ortegas-focused episode. It kind of wasn't. It was sort of half and half between Pike and Ortegas. So there seemed to be like she had not the episode I kind of wanted to have. I wanted to sort of like have a sort of trajectory and give her a bit of a past story and maybe take the spotlight for a bit, but it did just seem to be like she lost her memories and then had a massive confidence boost. I fly the ship, which was a cool moment. I did like that. Even with all the sort of...
it was a cool moment and all, but what did we come into the episode knowing? She flies the ship.
Yeah.
What are we coming out of the episode knowing? She flies the ship.
Yeah.
It's like they tried to put a lot of weight and resonance around that, but in the end, there's no growth there. There's no development there.
Like she didn't get to
We've had a lot of backstory with Lon over the last really season 1 and season 2. We know a lot about her, and we had a centric episode just last week. And now we're kind of like, okay, everybody should get their own episode arcs, maybe except for Spock, so we can see where all these people came from, who they are. Kind of got that with Una, really, with the trial, and an excellent episode. And yeah, I agree. You just kind of get, hey, this is Erica Ortegas. She flies the ship. By the way, Pike calls her Erica. By the way, they've served together a lot. She's a veteran. By the way, she's a pilot. Oh, and she's a pilot. She's really good at it, with a smirk on her face, and she loves to control. We've got that on Disco too, where we've just got a really good pilot, and we don't know why she's a good pilot, but just that she's a good pilot. And but did we ever learn why Sulu was such a good pilot? So much so that his own daughter became a pilot.
Do we know that Sulu was a good pilot?
Yes,
he was a pilot.
He canonically was.
Was he? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Guess what? He flew a helicopter.
If you can go from piloting the Enterprise to a bird of prey to a Huey, and you're like, the only faux pas you make is turning on the windshield wipers, you're probably a pretty good pilot. So exactly. So I take this. I don't think this is an Ortegas episode. Like everyone took there is an Ortegas episode this season to mean that it would be this one, because this is the clip they showed of like, we're going to show you a bit of season 2. And I don't think this is the Ortegas episode. I think this is a Pike episode that they gave Ortegas something to do in, and we are going to get something much more substantive later on in the season. I'm hoping that is the case, because there are tons of hints about Ortegas here that it's like, okay, so we know she's a veteran because she referred to that in the opener with her history with the Klingons. She knows plenty about hiding from Klingon ships, so she clearly was in the war. As we've established, she's served with Pike for a long time. I'm interested by the fact that she appears to have a model of a ship similar to the Shenzhou, like the Walker class, right next to the Enterprise.
What if?
Which indicates maybe.
What if her and Detmer were like Alpha Beta shift pilots on the Shenzhou? Like, that would be cool.
That's entirely possible.
I think like a prequel, like little spin-off, like a short trek with her and Detmer being ultra competitive in the Academy could be very cool, because they both claim to be big hotshot pilots. So that'd be a fun little.
Yeah, I'm absolutely assuming that we're going to get something more substantive, because in the trailer for season 2, we got a shot of a few things that I thought was definitely going to come up here. Because they made reference to like a casket of memories that was going to hold all of the memories, and they were going to release it, and they were going to come back to themselves. And that didn't happen in this episode. But what I assumed when I heard that was like, oh, they're going to smash some kind of telepathic device, and then it's all going to come flooding back, and then But that didn't happen. So that means there's still an episode out there where Uhura is seeing a shuttle crash that's probably her parents' death. Where Lon is seeing Gorn like face to face, probably in reference to when it was your non-breeding planet, and I wonder if maybe we'll get a more deep dive into Ortegas there, and possibly we will start to understand why she is a pilot.
Right?
What?
You know what that sounds like? That sounds like Star Trek 5. That sounds like Cyborg.
Oh, it does, doesn't it? You do that. I said that in one of our reviews. I was like, I want that to be the thing. I want the entire crew to be. I would love that. That'd be great.
That'd be fun.
That'd be cool. But we have to hope. I want that to be Cyborg in this.
No, Cyborg's coming back for the musical episode. We know it.
Share your pain and gain strength from the
it.
sharing.
I wanted it to become like Hulk ripped by the end of it, just fueled by the pain. Oh my god. So we were also talking about, Ortega's got a good amount of stuff to do here. This is a nice, this is what it actually means to pilot the ship and how much is involved in it, because that's something that TNG era Trek was really bad at selling, was piloting the starship's hard and really important. Paris got to do and then it looked cool, and on the CGI shot, but there was a bit of a disconnect there. You were just kind of told he was a cool pilot. Ortega's is a bit more of a tactile thing where you're getting to see her actually do the motions.
Well, we did see Picard do it once when he went around in Booby Trap. He went around sort of the asteroids and showed I was a test pilot myself.
Because you want that, you want the one-to-one. That's important to establish a good pilot. And I feel like it's nice to put a bit of respect on the helmsman, because otherwise it's like they don't get shit all to do. Like Sulu historically got nothing to do, and Detmer got a little bit to do in season 3 and 4, but not much. I wish you get some more development. Now, if we're talking about people who need development, Una, she didn't get a lot to do here, which I'm a bit sad about.
No, it's continuing a trend of finding reasons to take her off the board early in episodes.
Yeah, it kind of is the thing, isn't it?
Like, oh wait, you're all super strong, awesome Illyrian, but it's the
the Wolf effect.
I was going to say Data. How can we compromise Data in this situation?
Captain Marvel needs to go to the other side of the galaxy right now. Can't be here. So
you saying Una's going to go nuts and sort of go power slide through a bunch of starships?
I'd be down for that.
Why not?
I would love to see Una get to unleash some kind of tactical genius or some real ridiculous bullshit.
I want to see her in command doing something awesome. Like, I need to see why she's the first officer. Because apart from a few administrative stuff, we've not seen her essentially have her moment. Need to see her being sort of a little bit badass. Which
we've established who she is. Now we want to see what she's capable of.
Yeah, definitely.
So I hope we get. And the thing is, I feel like this is such a weird problem to have, because I'm coming off of the end of a Strange New Worlds episode that's got really good development for Pike. It's got a good Ortega's scene. It's got Mbenga developing a bit more of his trauma. It's got a cool and I'm like, but I want more. I want more character development. It's like, these aren't characters I'm unhappy. I want everyone to get equal shares of the. There's no one on the crew that I'm like, no, you know what, leave them off the board. I don't give a fuck. I'm like, no, I want to know more about you. I want to know more about you. I'm like, I could probably take backing off of Spock a little bit, but Ethan Peck is so good that I'm never like, but there was too much Spock. That's the kind of thing, isn't it?
Well, plus it also seems like, I don't know, it doesn't take very much for Ethan Peck's Spock to make an impact. Like, it just takes a line or two and it really stands out. Some of the other characters, I think they need a little more time and I don't know, things to come across. It takes
because he's so well sketched, and he has the advantage of Disco as well, providing all the backstory for even just
the
this
entire
version.
history of the character of Spock.
Just in
general.
I was going to say, just for this version, you have even more. But if you take the entire thing in context, totally.
I do often forget we had a whole season of Discovery with young Spock. Like, I always forget that.
And he was great.
Yeah,
he was great in there. Because I said he. Oh, you go.
Well, I wonder if Rebecca Romaine's schedule is secretly tighter than we think it is, and she can only be around for so much of this stuff. Because
is she going to be in a new X-Men film?
I'd be down for it. She still looks great.
It's conspicuous in
her schedule is she's going to be at Star Trek Las Vegas next month, sitting next to her husband, signing autographs for $60.
If I could get that bag, I would.
Hey, that's a great value too, because Bill Shatner, $175. Fuck his fat ass. That's way too. Just to sit next to a wax statue.
So, I have to call out two instances of actors absolutely killing it with micro expressions in this episode. So we have Spock with that side eye when he says, "Perhaps it would be best to avoid that rock."
That's very good,
and they're just very incredible. And also, I want to call out Jess Bush in the scene with Chapel and Una, where she's like, explain that to me again, and then she's like, oh, we're all fucked. Like you can just see the entire thing. Oh, I'm dead.
Hey, what's for
I'm
breakfast?
not going home. Shit. Yeah, no, totally. And it's like, I love that. I love when you get to see an entire conversation. Like, it's something that happens in comic books. It's like you get like an entire massive dialogue box, and it's like it tells you what the character's feeling. But a really good actor can communicate it with just like a minor eye movement, and I love that. We have some really good, talented actors here. Then I love seeing them at work like that.
All right. Let's move on and talk about our best moments and worst moments, because I don't think we've expressed what happens in this episode, but I don't express how we think we feel about it, because this stuff to me feels like a bit of a neutral one. So Frank, give me your best and worst moments, please.
It's all kind of blending together. So best, I loved, it's hard to pick an individual one, so I will just steal and take this. Best were little individual character moments that were sprinkled all throughout, exactly like Stars just eloquently said, where you see these moments of brilliance and you see acting come through, you see emotion come through just with looks, with expressions. Or just very simple acts and not big grandiose speeches. We've already had that this season. So if I had to pick one of those little character sprinkling moments, I really did enjoy Ortega's melting down in her room and talking to the computer. That was nice because you see just that moment of schizophrenic meltdown before the darkest, before the light. So appreciating all the different actors and actresses in the show, and I think we should get more of her because that was absolutely brilliant. If I had to pick a worst, I mean, just the plot in general, some of the backstory could have done a lot more fleshing out, because it does rely on something that's 60 years old. It was filmed in 64. And if you didn't know that backstory, that someone was stranded, it would have been nice just even on a throwaway line somewhere to say Pike has emotional issues sometimes dealing with things because he lost a crewman here. Back when they did the Remembrance Day, where they remember all their crew, and he could say something like that to really tie it together. That whole aspect of it, where a guy became God King on a planet just because he was stranded there with a couple of phasers, at that one, it kind of lost me.
Okay, big.
So, I think my best and worst moment comes from the same scene of the episode. So, the visual language of Ortegas going out into the hall after the main memory wipe has hit, and seeing all of those crew just
that hallway shot.
Yeah, being aliens in their own house, just like being, I am here, but why am I here? That kind of disorienting visual language, I think was fantastic and
sublime.
Yeah. But also in that scene, there is a character who is called Scared Crewman in the credits, and the look on his face. I don't know how familiar you guys are with classic album covers, but there is a King Crimson album called "In the Court of the Crimson King."
Yes, I have that on vinyl.
Oh wow!
And the face that he has, and I have it pulled up now for everybody that isn't familiar with it. That is the face that the guy has, and it doesn't change. Like he's stuck in that facial expression for the entire time he's on camera, and it is conspicuously ridiculous.
You just nailed the Daily Double. 100 points to you for keeping this thing musically themed again.
It's
Yes,
true.
everything is a lyric.
Yeah.
Okay, Stars.
Okay, for me, I would have to say my best moment is just kind of on a conceptual level. I love Discovery did this first, and Stranger Worlds is continuing to do it, and it's just reaching back into that incredibly rich history and yanking on the threads and making it still emotionally resonant. Like all the stuff on Talos 4 in Discovery, I think was incredibly resonant, and this was to a mind. It's picking on a much smaller part of the history of like the Rigel 7 thing, which we always kind of wanted to know a bit more about. And now we get that context, and then you find out that it's turned into a Omega Glory situation. And Omega Glory, for context, for those of you who have not watched TOS, is this really interesting episode that starts off with a classic Star Trek conundrum where it's like, we go onto this sister ship, the Enterprise, and it's like, everyone's turned into fucking salt? What the fuck? Wait, what the... This is... uniforms full of salt? What happened? And you beam down onto the planet, and it turns out they had to get off the ship because of some kind of radiation thing, whatever. And then the captain has just gone plain nuts and is emptying entire phaser power, power cells, into the natives to keep them in line. And then it turns into a stupid thing about the US Constitution. But I love it because that was a really cool concept that was done so incredibly badly, and this is kind of that concept done right, where you get to see, okay, Starfleet is meant to be the best of the best, like even down to the lowest echelons of the crew. You're kind of meant to be an exemplar for humankind. What drives you to break bad in that instance? And it's like, yeah, you know what? Being the yeoman, like the personal assistant to the captain, and then you get abandoned on this awful planet and you start forgetting your own history, you start filling in the gaps, you start becoming spiteful, you probably have to kill quite a lot to survive. Like, yeah, like that makes emotional sense to me. And I'm like, I'm looking at, so incidentally, he is Yeoman Zach Nagayan. You catch his last name on the briefing board at the beginning. And he does turn into a bit of a Mortal Kombat character at the end, in terms of the aesthetics.
Bit of a Joker as
but
well.
I still, a little bit, but it makes sense. And I do like that Pike has enough empathy in him to reach out to him and say, you know, yes, this was an awful situation. I am so sorry for what happened to you, but I'm not going to give you the easy out and say that this was mind control, because guess what? I was helping people after being left here, and you were killing people. So let's see. You have to take some responsibility for that. And I just like that. I like that as a Starfleet done right, Starfleet done wrong, and what it means to be your best self in the worst situation. And I like that. Worst moment. So I'm not usually one to rag on Anson Mount for his acting, because I don't think that it's something that I ever have to call him up on. I think he does amazingly in almost every instance. But I think there were one or two moments when he was giving Zach the business where I was like, maybe another take or two, maybe a bit more intensity, maybe a bit more, I want to hear you scream yourself hoarse because you are, you know, one of your security officers is dying, you are losing your memories, the moral fabric of who you are is coming apart a bit more, just another take or two. And it's still perfectly serviceable, but I'm like, I feel like he could have gotten a bit more. And that's my worst moment, is that I feel like they could have turned him really terrifying instead of just like, you know, because there's terrifying without context, and then there's terrifying with context. And it's like, terrifying without context would have been him just going off the rails, and someone who doesn't know Pike would be like, that guy's fucking terrifying. Instead, it relies on our context of Pike as a generous, well-meaning, compassionate individual for it to be terrifying. Because I don't think the take that they went with quite sells it. So it's a very minor nitpick, but it was something that I was immediately kind of picking at when I watched this episode. But it's a very small nitpick. I like the episode overall.
You're saying they could have punched that up, is what you're saying.
Yeah, they could have punched it up a notch or two. Yeah, totally.
I agree, because he sat down the rifle and said, no, this planet shows you who you really are, after he just beat the fuck out of that
guy. He did deserve it, though. Yeah. Idle.
I'm trying to think my favourite moment is, because kind of the whole thing felt a little bit like okay to me. I don't think I had anything that particularly stood out as like, wow, that's cool, I really like that. But I find that Ortega's psyching herself up and then doing the maneuvers, even though she's sort of memory blind essentially, but just reacting on instinct was kind of cool. And her sort of like going, I fly the ship, and I liked the editing that was done there. That was like cutting between like, I fly the ship, I fly the ship, what? I fly the ship, you know, that kind of thing. And her little moment, you know, she's wandering past people who are just like losing their minds. She's going, I fly the ship. Hey, I fly the ship. Yeah, yeah, I do that. Let's go do that.
That would have been good.
And like from Spock's perspective, like she walks off the bridge going, I don't know what's going on. And he's like, I don't know what to do. And then she comes back going, I fly the ship. And he's like, oh, thank God. Glad somebody does. Yeah, I like that. As for worst moment, God damn it, Captain Patel, will you ever eat anything of Captain Pike's? He's made you the same microwave spaghetti for 5 times now, and I don't care if he's just put it back in the fridge and reused it. You're gonna eat some, and yeah, but I also well, to pick on that point as well, I wasn't keen on how much of a kind of a bit of a dick that Pike was there. Just like, she's just been turned down for Commodore. Is this really the moment you want to break it up? Like, is this just
look? Pike has to be bad at romance because he needs flaws, okay?
Yeah.
Because if he wasn't bad at romance, then he is historically bad at romance.
Like, you know, maybe just have like a bit of, you know, release, then suddenly turn around and go like, babe, I don't think it's working.
So, Idol, what you're saying is you've never said anything ill-advised to someone at a emotionally sensitive moment when you could have been more sensitive.
Here's a story. Okay, so I once told my now wife, or at the time months-long girlfriend, that I was leaving her to get rid of her hiccups, which it worked. It got rid of her hiccups, but she didn't take the joke and she ran off crying, and I had to go and find her and say, no. Yeah, that's my ill-timed moment there. Wow, I'm a dick.
I mean,
Okay, my worst moment for this episode is that story.
Yeah, it's like they have put out like oil fires with dynamite before, but you know, that's
I don't know what I was thinking.
That's the nuclear option.
Yeah. It was at a fancy dress party, so there's me dressed as a hot dog and her dressed up as like a chavvy woman as well.
You're a fucking monster.
Hey, 2 children later, we're still going strong. She still resents me. Did it just to spite me. Anyway, less about me. Let's move on to the ratings. Let's see what we give
Now,
this.
hold on a minute. I want to hear.
Hey, also, didn't know you made it.
I want to hear more about this because no.
You really don't. Yes, okay, since you spoke up, Frank, please, ratings. And anyone in chat, if you're watching, if you're listening, give us your rating. Let us know what you think out of 10. Please add as many decimal points what you think of this episode as well.
Do you want to know what I...
Sorry?
This is normally Stars' thing. So
Stars yes, racing criteria. Not like we've been doing that for the past 100 episodes. Okay, go on. Stars, what is our rating criteria for this week?
All right, gentlemen, how many scared crewmen in the Court of the Crimson Kings out of 10 would you give this episode?
Amazing.
I like it.
Sorry, Big. I was thinking about it. I was like, no, that's perfect. I can never top this.
Okay.
I'm happy to bring it in.
Frank, ratings and reasons.
Boy, so far this season, I would say this is going to be my lowest rated Strange New Worlds episode. I hope it's the lowest rated of the season. And it only goes back up from here. So out of 10 scared shitless crewmen from a King Crimson album cover in the corner of the Enterprise, or out of 10 Uhura's mystery breakfasts that you want to say, I'm going to give it a 6.1. Now,
0.1, wow.
It's better than some of the absolute dreck we've watched. It could be miles better, though. It could be miles worse. I appreciated the little character moments and the little chuckles that we got along the way. But now that I'm saying that, I'm talking myself down 5.9.
5.9. You know when we originally said this? We said, yes, out of 10, we'll keep it easy. Now, clearly, we're just going out of 100. Big, go on.
So, I think this is a 6 for me. It's the first Strange New Worlds episode that I can pretty definitively say I wish they had taken one more pass at this script. it feels like all the elements of it are a little too rushed, a little too underbaked, and they don't quite make a coherent whole when taken all together. Like, it's like the stuff with Ortegas is good, the stuff with the planet is good, the stuff with the people on the planet is good, but I don't know, it doesn't all hang together, and it doesn't feel like any one aspect of it is given enough time to really interrogate to the level that, to the credit of the show, they have taken the time to flesh out in previous episodes. It just feels like this one just needed a little bit more zhuzh in the writer's room before it was sent out. So yeah, it's a 6 for me.
A little sun. Stars.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go a bit out of the curve here, and I'm gonna give this 8 scared crewmen in the Court of the Crimson Kings out of 10, because for me, this is an episode that hangs together mostly out of a succession of really good lines that speak a lot about a character. Because if I think about this episode, I think of Spock talking about, you could just say 2 moons. He's like, I could, but that would be leading to a conclusion. Guess what? That's all you need to know about Spock. Luke, down on the planet, I am swayed by your emotions. And I'm like, you know what? I was asking the question, why are you going to help them? Why are you, Lotus Eater, going to help these people with their problems? Like, okay, no. That makes perfect emotional sense for a Lotus Eater who goes with the flow. It's like, I am swayed by your emotions because you have convictions because I don't have them. Okay, I buy it. And then again with Zach, when he's talking, I love this scene, by the way, where he's like, it's a really nice twist on a person begging someone that they know to get their memories back, to come back. But instead of it being because you love them, it's because, hey, I need to get Nice Pike back because Mean Pike is going to fucking kill me if he doesn't. And then he just has this little line that is very small, but it says a lot. And it's like he's talking to Pike about the effects of the palace and the ore that stops him from affecting the memory. He says, but of course you don't believe me. And that says a lot about their relationship and what it was like for him serving as yeoman pre the cage in one line. Like, there are a lot of lines here that do a lot of legwork, and I really appreciate that kind of script writing. I don't know, it just worked for me. Like, there's something about this that just really worked for me. So, 8 out for me. How about you, Isle? 8
for you. Chat so far, Kern has given it a 6, Chris Chubbs has given it a 6.5-ish, so we will be adding chat's ratings this week to the final score, so please give them in before we finish if you can. I'm kind of thinking around a 6 as well. There were elements I wish there would have been more of. I think the parts that let it down for me are kind of how shallow the society felt like. I think if we go back to Lift Us Where Suffering Can't Reach, that kind of felt like a full planet worth of people with its own hierarchy and civilization, and even going to other even TNG episodes where the Masterpiece Society, where you kind of they're bashing against the limits of the budget. They almost felt like there was a full society here it just kind of felt like there's 3 people in a castle and 12 people in a field. Like, this is supposed to be a whole, this is supposed to be the Calarians, or what you can, how they exist. It kind of felt a little hollow.
I feel like that's kind of the intent, because it's literally the Lotus Eaters. There is no society here because there can't be. Like, you have the top 5% who actually retain their memories, and then you have a literal emotionless, convictionless, society below them.
But it didn't even feel like there was a society. It felt like there was one guy called Luke in a tent. He seemed to have 4 tents, and then this is all what they're basing their, and Zach the Omen has kind of taken over a planet of 6 people. It felt it somehow. I know other episodes have only had a total of 6 guest stars in the background, but somehow this felt emptier, and I can't quite explain it.
Yeah, so well, I mean, if you think about it for half a second, it's like, why is that hierarchy there?
Well, because the planet had the asteroid land, and it's creating this radiation that means that you literally can't form society. In order to form a society, you need long, sustained conviction and ideals, and it's like, well, this literally means you can't.
That's what I mean.
Can't develop.
Why is the dichotomy there? Why is there the people in the castle and the people out in the field? Why do that?
Well, I would have assumed that it was a case of someone was lucky enough to have dug the ore out that allows you to retain your memories, and they were like, well, I can leverage this. I'm the only one who seems to remember day to day. I can take advantage of this. And then they create an entire thing out of this, and that appears to have been way, way, way in the past, and people just take advantage of it as they go along.
Before the asteroid hit,
it's all subtext.
Yeah,
you have to do that legwork for yourself.
True.
Yeah,
that is very true.
I get this in the inferences more on Pike and then the memory loss as well, but I also felt like it was a bit of a tropey episode that I feel like this has been done before, people losing their memories and going, who am I? I don't know, let's find out. And they were doing less of the kind of people wandering around going, am I the captain? No, I must be the captain. I have the bigger chest. There was less of that, but there was more of like Ortega sort of like going, like saying like, who am I? Don't know. What am I doing here? It was kind of almost Packlet language that wasn't kind of, I don't know, it felt like they had to go to great lengths to say like, Chapel had to sit there and goes like, yes, you lose your memories, but you don't forget all these other things that you would forget to be able to do things. So that's how we can explain that Ortega still flies the ship. It sort of felt a little bit on the ropes, a little bit kind of needed a bit more, I don't know, a bit more push to prove itself, I think. So yeah, I'm on a 6 for that, I think.
Yeah, I think this all kind of crystallized for me where the dividing line is for the episode. It's like how much you enjoy this episode is dependent on how willing you are to do the extra legwork that the episode itself does.
That's probably quite fair. Yeah.
And I think Stars, you're very much more on the I can headcanon my way into this all making sense.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I'm well. Yeah, like I've written my way out of these situations. I'm like, let's give this depth. Here's I'm going to regurgitate every thought and feeling I've ever had.
So.
Yeah. So in conclusion,
takes all kinds.
Yeah. In conclusion, we have given this a 6.4, including chat's total as well, which brings Star Trek to a cool 5.8. So far, Strangely World season 2 is a 7.3. So we're rating this season quite high. We think overall so far 4 episodes in.
That's a good rating.
Next week's episode is called Charades, and it features Chapel and Spock on a shuttle. So yes.
Uh-oh.
One woo, crash. Yeah, I think this is from what we see on the clips. It might be the one where they see a burning Constitution class starship or something like that. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun. It is actually next week's episode's written by Henry Alonso Myers himself, along with Catherine Lynn. So it should be a bit more high caliber from the showrunner himself. But thank you very much for everyone watching. Thank you everyone for the review. We'll be back next week. Keep an eye out this Wednesday. We'll be playing Star Trek Resurgence again, the next episode. Looking forward to that, and then we'll be doing that the week after. As always, keep an eye on the Discord for events and on Twitter and places like that. We will see you soon. Ta-ra!